Was I wrong to sell the family home, the house where my grandchildren were growing up, without telling my son and his wife until the closing papers were signed? Tell me honestly if you would have stayed quiet, endured years of cold disrespect and calculated insults, only to drop a $3 $2 million bombshell that completely dismantled the life they had taken for granted. I still remember the smug look on my son Mark's face when he threw those words at me. "You eat but don't help." He said it with such casual cruelty, as if I were a burden, a useless, silent fixture taking up space in their perfect world. They treated me like a ghost in my own home, the place I bought and paid for, the place they assumed was their inheritance, ready and waiting. I didn't shout, I didn't argue. I just nodded and walked away, and in that silence, I executed the quietest, most devastating act of reclaiming my life. But to truly understand the depth of their entitlement and the years of abuse that led to that final, explosive moment, I need to take you back to the day I moved in, and the unwritten contract they immediately assumed was binding. My name is Arthur. I'm 72 years old, and until recently, I was living with my son, Mark, his wife, Sarah, and their 3 children in a beautiful, sprawling colonial house in the suburbs. It was a comfortable arrangement, or at least, that's what I told myself for years. The story of how I ended up there starts about 7 years ago. My wife, the love of my life, passed away after a long illness. The grief was crippling, and the 4-bedroom house we had shared for 40 years suddenly felt vast and empty. Around the same time, Mark and Sarah were struggling. They had recently had their 3rd child, and their small starter home was bursting at the seams. Mark was a decent financial planner, but they were cash poor, drowning in daycare fees and debt. The solution seemed obvious, heartwarming even. They would move into my old house, which was closer to their jobs, and I would move into an in-law suite in their new, larger home. But there was a problem. Their dream home was beyond their budget. I, however, had the resources. My wife and I had saved diligently, and with the sale of my house, I had a substantial amount of liquid capital. Mark and Sarah found this beautiful 5-bedroom colonial that they instantly fell in love with, but it was far above what they could qualify for, even with their combined salaries. I, desperate for connection and eager to help my family find stability after my loss, offered a solution. I would put up the down payment, and more importantly, I would take out the mortgage in my name, effectively owning the house outright. They would contribute a fixed, generous monthly rent. That covered the utilities, property taxes, and a substantial portion of the mortgage payment. And eventually, the plan was for them to assume the deed after a certain period. Mark and Sarah were overjoyed. It was a godsend. We moved in, and the arrangement on paper was clear. I was the homeowner, they were contributing occupants. But in their minds, from the moment the key turned in the lock, it ceased being my house, and instantly became theirs. The entitlement began subtly. I was supposed to have a comfortable, newly renovated in-law suite on the ground floor. What I got was a cramped, slightly moldy bedroom in the basement, repurposed from a storage room, while Mark used the prime ground floor space for his home office. My request for a small kitchenette was dismissed. Sarah said, "It's better for everyone if we all eat together in the main kitchen, Arthur. It's family bonding." It sounded nice, but in reality, it meant I was fully dependent on their schedule for meals, and I soon realized family bonding meant listening to Mark and Sarah complain about their day while I ate quietly. The subtle shifts in language were the most grating. I was no longer Dad, or Arthur, to Sarah. I was Arthur, often spoken with a tone of weary tolerance. They started treating the house as a legacy already secured. They'd constantly talk about when we remodel the master bath, or when we finally tear down that hideous shed. Every decision, every maintenance issue, every furniture placement was decided by them, without so much as a discussion with the legal owner, me. My suggestions were met with eye rolls or curt dismissal. "It's fine, Arthur, we have it handled." I became the quiet lodger, the live-in babysitter, and the emergency chauffeur, always on call but never consulted. The emotional neglect was far worse than the cramped basement. They'd often forget I was there, carrying on loud arguments or intimate discussions as if I were a piece of furniture. They stopped inviting me to family outings, assuming my age made me incapable or unwilling. My attempts to help, fixing a leaky faucet, gardening, offering to pay for a vacation, were met with polite, icy rejection. Sarah once told me, very sweetly, "Oh, Arthur, we don't need your money. We just need you to be available for the kids when we work late." It was clear. My worth was purely transactional, measured only by my utility as free childcare. The children, bless their hearts, were the only source of warmth, but even they were subtly coached to view Grandpa as a gentle helper, not the head of the family. The final insult, the line that broke the dam, happened a few weeks ago. It was a typical Sunday morning. I had just finished taking all 3 kids to the park so Mark and Sarah could enjoy a rare lie-in. I came back, exhausted, and poured myself a cup of coffee. Mark and Sarah were seated at the large, custom-made kitchen island, scrolling through their phones. I had planned to sit down and finally eat the cold breakfast I'd prepared for myself. As I sat down, Mark barely looked up from his phone and said, with that distinct air of smug entitlement, "Hey, Dad, Sarah and I were just talking about the grocery bill. It's getting pretty high. I noticed you had 3 servings of bacon yesterday. You eat, but you don't really help with the household finances, do you? You eat, but don't help." Those 6 words, delivered so casually, summarized the entire 7 years of disrespect. I was a sponge, a burden, a useless mouth to feed. The irony was suffocating. I, the owner of the house, the man who paid the mortgage, the man who provided 7 years of free childcare, was being scolded over 3 pieces of bacon. I looked at Mark's self-satisfied face, then at Sarah's indifferent gaze, and something inside me snapped. Not with anger, but with cold, clear finality. I simply nodded once, said "I see," and walked back down to my basement room. I didn't argue. I didn't defend myself. I didn't mention the hundreds of thousands of dollars I had poured into the house and the mortgage. That was the last meaningful conversation I would ever have with them. So that's the situation I was in, and I had to make a choice. Before I tell you what happened next, I want you to pause and comment below what you would have done in my shoes. Would you have finally launched into a screaming match, listing all your contributions? Would you have just moved out quietly and gone to a retirement community? Or would you have executed the nuclear option, reminding them in a way they could never forget who truly held the power? I truly want to know what you think. My choice was the nuclear option, executed with the precision of a silent assassin. That afternoon, I didn't pack a bag. I called my lawyer, a sharp woman named Elizabeth, who had handled my wife's estate. I told her the entire story, ending with Mark's 6 crushing words. Her response was simple: "Arthur, the house is legally yours. You can sell it tomorrow." That was all I needed to hear. My plan was simple, legal, and devastating. I authorized Elizabeth to immediately find a specialized, high end real estate broker who dealt exclusively with cash, only buyers, and who specialized in expedited, confidential closings. We found a buyer within 48 hours, a small medical company looking to convert the Colonial into a temporary administrative office. The sale price was $3, $2 million, a reflection of the hot market and the specialized buyer. The closing was set for 3 weeks later. The next 3 weeks were surreal. I lived among them like a ghost, observing their entitled routine. Mark left for work, complaining about his long commute. Sarah went to the gym, complaining about the high cost of property taxes, which I was technically paying. I continued to watch the kids, quietly packing my life into 23 small, labeled boxes in the basement. I didn't take any of their insults personally anymore. They were just background noise. They had no idea that their entire foundation was being systematically dismantled beneath their feet. The day of the closing arrived. It was a Friday. I had arranged for a small moving truck to pick up my boxes early the next morning. That evening, I sat Mark and Sarah down in the living room. They were annoyed. They thought I was going to apologize for the bacon incident. "What's this about, Arthur? I have work to do," Mark muttered, clearly impatient. I sat across from them, folding my hands. "I have something important to discuss regarding the house." I pulled out a single, certified document, the notice to vacate. I slid it across the expensive coffee table they had purchased without asking me. "This is a legal notice. The closing was today. Effective immediately, you have 30 days to vacate the premises." The silence was immediate and thick. Sarah laughed first, a high, nervous sound. "What? Is this a joke, Arthur? Are you trying to teach us a lesson about bacon?" Mark picked up the paper, his face still smug. But as his lawyer's eyes registered the letterhead, the title company, the legal language, the signed and notarized date, the color drained from his face. He looked up at me, pure, unadulterated panic in his eyes. "What have you done? You can't. This is our asterisk house. We have equity. We paid the mortgage." I smiled, a slow, gentle, but absolutely firm smile. "No, Mark, you paid me rent. I paid the mortgage, and as the sole legal owner, I exercised my right to sell the property. I did it quietly, cleanly, and legally. The new owner is a corporation that requires possession in 30 days. I let that sink in. Then, I delivered the final blow." I looked directly at him and repeated his own words, calmly and clearly. "I decided to sell because, as you pointed out, Mark, I eat, but I don't help. I realized my presence here was an imposition. And frankly, I didn't want to live with people who viewed me as a useless burden." Sarah finally shrieked, jumping up. "You can't do this to us. We have 3 children. Where will we go? You monster." Mark, recovering slightly, started to argue about the down payment I had provided. "You owe us. We invested in this house." I reached into my coat pocket and pulled out a bank statement. I slid it over. "The down payment has been fully repaid, along with every dollar you ever gave me toward rent, plus 10% interest, as of this morning. You have exactly 0 financial claim to this property." The look on their faces, the shock, the humiliation, the sheer, crushing reality that they had gambled everything on their entitlement and lost, was the only repayment I ever needed. They were suddenly homeless, and it was entirely due to their own disrespect. I left that night. I didn't wait for the screaming. My small moving truck was already waiting at a near-by extended stay hotel I had booked. I wrote a check for the kids' private school tuition for the next 2 years, left it on the kitchen island, and walked out. I didn't look back at the perfect colonial house they had ruined with their coldness. The next morning, I drove to my new, modest, and blissfully quiet apartment I had purchased with a fraction of the sale proceeds. The aftermath was exactly as expected. The torrent of angry calls and texts started immediately. Mark went from furious threats of legal action, which his lawyer quickly debunked, to pathetic, tearful apologies, begging me to save them. I didn't answer. I sent one final text through Elizabeth. Your treatment of me was a permanent contract. I simply signed the termination papers. My daughter-in-law, Sarah, was the worst. She called me every name imaginable, claiming I had destroyed my grandchildren's lives. My only response was the tuition check. The family reputation suffered a devastating blow. Mark and Sarah had to reveal the true nature of their financial arrangement and their sudden eviction to the extended family, who, having witnessed their condescension for years, were surprisingly supportive of my decision. They finally found a small rental, forced to downgrade their lifestyle completely. I haven't seen them, but I hear they are fighting constantly, their shared entitlement now fractured by genuine hardship. I, on the other hand, am thriving. With the sale money, I bought a small but beautiful condo in a community of seniors who value companionship and respect. I travel, I volunteer, and I talk to my grandchildren every day via video call, which is a joy. The $3. $2 million didn't just buy me financial security, it bought me my dignity back. I wasn't wrong. I simply cashed out on a toxic investment. So, that's my story. It's a messy one, but it taught me that respect is never an obligation. It's earned, and when it's gone, you have the right to reclaim your peace, no matter the cost to others. If you were on my side and believe I was right to sell the house, please like this video. Subscribe for more stories about getting even and reclaiming your self-worth, and share your final thoughts on the true cost of their entitlement in the comments section below. I want to hear what you think. I'll see you all in the next story.